Okay, this is English 373, week 2, part 7. There was something I should have done earlier and I didn't, and I'm going to do it now. I realize I forgot to do it. Normally, I'm used to watching this movie with my students and explaining things about the movie as the movie plays, or right after we watch the movie. But because it's online, I can't watch the movie with you. I just asked you to watch it on your own. But it's worth it, I think, to talk a little bit about the differences between the film and the movie. There's not many of them, and actually, I like a lot of them. Usually, I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's different from the book. That must be bad." Not all differences from the books are bad. And every time a movie remakes a book, the movie's always worse. No, it's not. There's lots of movies that are way better than the book. The Godfather, Fight Club, Solaris. I could do this all day. So, um, the differences between the movie and the book. I was reminded of this because, again, the movie starts with Lady Macbeth burying her child. It's a line, but it's not a crazy change, because if you've read the play, it's a line. It's a line that's in the play, in a speech. She says it. She makes reference to her dead child. A lot of people think that's so important, they put it right at the front of the movie. It's great. In the movie, there are 4 witches, not 3. There's a little child witch. That's really important because one of the things that the Macbeth is about is children. The Macbeths don't have any children. Macbeth kills Macduff's children, and so they like to stick kids in there when they can. So there's a 4th witch who's a kid. There's all the kids singing to the king, and Lady Macbeth sort of singing with them. It's a reminder that the Macbeths don't have children. That's why they put the kids on screen. Let's see, what else? There's a big speech Macbeth gives on the way to killing Duncan, but I'll go over that later. In the movie, he just kind of goes over to Duncan and kills him. This is an important one that confuses students. In the play, Duncan has 2 children. Most movies, the other kid is named Donalbain or something. I don't even fucking remember. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't really have a role to play, and so he's often cut out of the movies, and he should be, because he's a complete fucking waste of time. So usually Malcolm is like an only child who runs away after his father is killed, and he returns. But this is based off a historical event. And so, as a result, because the king had 2 kids in history, Shakespeare put 2 kids in the play. But that's not in the movie. We don't need that. That just confuses everybody. So usually that kid's cut out, and he is cut out of this movie. The other interesting thing about the movie is the killing of Banquo. Banquo is killed by assassins sent by Macbeth, and Banquo's kid Fleance gets away. It's not really explained how. Sometimes the kid just gets away, like he just runs away and the murderers can't catch him. Awesome. I've seen movie versions where the assassins are willing to kill Banquo for Macbeth, but they don't want to kill a kid. Like they don't want to kill little children. And so basically the assassins kind of let the kid go because their heart's not in it. They don't really want to murder a kid. They're like reluctant. And so they're like, oh, he got away, but it's just because they didn't want to kill him. This movie does something really, again, that's an actor's interpretation. That's the director and the actor interpreting. Because all Shakespeare says is that kid didn't get away. I'm sorry. All Shakespeare says is that Fleance got away. It doesn't say how. And so it's up to directors and actors to decide. So for some people, the kid just gets away. He's lucky. Some people, the assassins don't want to kill him, and that's why he gets away. In the movie version that I had you guys watch, they have a really interesting thing where the kid gets away because the witches essentially show up and save him. That's not in the play, but it's cool. I really like it, and I thought it was really kind of badass. Similarly, in the play, Lady Macbeth commits suicide. In the movie, she sort of has a dream about the witches and kind of goes off with them in the dream, and her body is dead when Macbeth comes in the room. She died in the dream because she saw the witches in the dream. That's not in the play. It's fucking cool. Usually I've seen movies where she slits her wrist in the bathtub or she throws herself off a tower, but I think going away with the witches is like a creepy, in the dream, and then her body is dead. It's fucking crazy. I really like it. Also, there's a famous scene of Lady Macbeth trying to wash the blood off of her hands, because she gets her hands bloody when they kill King Duncan, because she touches the bloody weapons that were used to kill Duncan, and she gets this like sleepwalking thing where she can't wash the blood off her hands, and she washes and washes and it never comes off. It does come off, but she thinks it's still there, because she has like the obsessive compulsive disorder with the washing of the hands, because she's guilty feeling because she helped kill King Duncan. In the movie, she delivers that. Usually when the actress delivers that speech, she is in a bathroom washing up. But in the movie, she's like in a church, in a dream. And she delivers the lines without moving. it's a little confusing if you don't know the play. If you already know she's supposed to be washing her hands, it's interesting that she's just sitting in a church talking about washing her hands. But it can be confusing if you're not aware of like what the normal way the scene looks like. Also, the movie does a creepy as fuck thing where she's talking to no one, and then it's like she's talking to a little toddler who's got like diseases on him. And I guess that's her kid that died of some kind of disease. Um, and again, that's not in the play, but it's cool that she's like talking to her dead child in this dream state where she then meets the witches and vanishes. It's pretty cool. I think that's it as far as sort of interesting twists and stuff. That the movie follows pretty closely. Every word they say in the movie is Shakespeare's words, but they've just been interpreted by the actors. Actors need to do a lot of work on Shakespeare. If you read the Shakespeare play that I gave you, you're going to notice some things like characters are never described. Sometimes someone will say, "Hey, you're really tall," but that's the only description that you get. Shakespeare does not say, "This guy who is tall." Weather is not talked about. Setting is not talked about. Again, because what we have of when we read a Shakespeare play, we're going off of what he handed to the actors to do on stage. So it wasn't supposed to be read by itself, and so there's no stage directions. There's no like there's barely like a he stabs him. They don't tell you like what the fight choreography is. They don't always say where he stabs him, and so actors have to decide. My favorite example of actors having to decide is the problem with Shakespeare is all we get is dialogue. It's just literally a list of what the actor should say, but it doesn't always say what the actor should do, which can be kind of confusing. In Hamlet, there's a line where it's a ridiculous line, but the king wants to know why is Hamlet so crazy. And his counselor Polonius shows up and he says, "I know why your son is crazy. He's in love with my daughter." And then Polonius says this: "If this be otherwise, your son is in love with my daughter." Quote, "If this be otherwise, take this from this." What? Like you read that on the page, and he literally goes, your son is in love with my daughter. That's why he's crazy. If this be otherwise, take this from this. Not one of Shakespeare's better lines. It's actually kind of like, what could that possibly mean? Honestly, nobody has any fucking idea. But we got a pretty good guess. What he's probably saying is, if this be otherwise, meaning if the situation is other than I say it is, that your son is crazy because he's in love with my daughter. If I'm wrong, and if this situation is other than I say it is, take this from this. So he's saying to the king, I'm so sure I'm right. If I'm wrong, you can take my head from my shoulders with an axe. But the way he puts it is, if this be otherwise, take this from this. But the actor has to figure out when he says those lines. He has to say, if this be otherwise, take this from this. I'm so sure of this, you can kill me if I'm wrong. So are we sure that's what Shakespeare meant? No idea. But it's a good guess. It's a really good guess, and I think that's about right. There are moments in Shakespeare where characters say something and we just don't know what they meant. So anyway, that's part of what actors and directors do, is they kind of interpret the thing. I'm sorry for putting the speech in here. I should have done it earlier, and I forgot. I don't know. I'm new to this. Online teaching, man. Actually, I've been doing it for 2.5 semesters. I just hated it the whole time. I was very resistant to learning how to do it correctly because I'm hoping you never do it again. All right, cool. So I think now we can kind of move on in this situation. Cool, we're doing good. Now we're at the big dagger speech. The next thing I want to talk about is a speech of Macbeth's where he's on his way to kill the king. This is a speech that is not in the movie. It's one of Shakespeare's more interesting speeches. Macbeth is on his way to kill Duncan, and he hallucinates. The hallucination. He sees a dagger floating in the air, pointing his way toward Duncan, and he kind of follows after it. And he tries to grab it, but it's not really there, so his hand goes right through it. He sees it again, but it's like covered in blood this time, and it's leading him where he's going, and it's a dagger. That's the thing he was going to use to kill Duncan. So he's having some kind of, and this is an interesting moment in Shakespeare. Again, you talk about what Shakespeare does not explain. Shakespeare never tells you whether that dagger is a hallucination or if it's supernatural. It is up to you, the audience, and the director and the actor to decide. And I will talk more about that in the next video.